high art form, music as well, and no doubt, fashion and whatever. So the plan is to revive the Delphic Games. We've revived the Olympic Games, which is great, over 100 years ago, and friends of mine from Ireland wrote up the story, The Golden Flame, of how that was done. It was inspired by a chap in Much Wenlock, of all places, who did a little mini Olympic Games, and then the idea caught on, it spread to Greece, and you had the revival. Well, it's time 100 years later to revive the second of the great games of Greece, called the Delphic Games. We should launch them in Delphi. It should be every artist, poet, musician, dancer, fashionista, filmmaker, web designer. We would have new categories of the arts, including ecological arts and so on. So Christian has got together this impressive International Delphic Council. It has support from the European Union, various cultural bodies, President of the European Parliament, etc. And really I'm just announcing, to all my friends, colleagues who may be artists, poets of some kind, please know, hear ye, the International Delphic Games is restarting. And once we get out of the pandemic, I think we should celebrate with a Delphic Games. And if it's just 20 people coming together, and reading poetry and doing the odd dance, so be it. If it's 3,000 coming from all over the world and they're properly organised and sent as cultural athletes, then so much the better. What we need is a Delphic Games Council in each country, and we have offers to do that in places like Ireland. I'd love to do that in France. To me, France is a place, a haven of culture. And this is why I love living here. It's a place that respects poetry and the arts, just as Ireland does. I mean, France is the haven of the arts, and so is, in its own way, Germany in the musical arts particularly. And every country in Europe should be part of this Delphic Games. And we heard from a colleague in Israel, in Jerusalem, they have every year in May the International Jerusalem Arts Festival, which invites poets and painters and musicians and dancers from all over the world. So Israel should be part of this too. They should send a team to Delphi. So should Lebanon. So should Palestine. We have, after all, the Eurovision Song Contest already there. But, to be honest, that's not the most highly mature form of aesthetic representation of what Europe stands for. So I think in the International Delphic Games we can do a bit better. We can have, the pop arts like that, but we can also have the others. We can have the Glenn Goulds of today, or the Hootie Menuhins, or the great dancers and so on. Can you imagine? I mean, Russia is interested in these games, and we have people in Petersburg that are helping. Can you imagine the great, Russian ballet dancers coming, or musicians? So I think this is really exciting, and I want to share, therefore, on an upbeat, positive note, in spite of the tragedy of the lockdown, in spite of the horrors of COVID, we will find out what's caused this with your help, and we will celebrate human creative achievement. And it would have a spiritual dimension to it. The Delphic priesthood, the prophets, the sages, the seers of every culture would be invited to do a sort of religious performance to launch the games. And its symbol is water. The Olympic Games uses fire, the torch. The Delphic Games always used water. And so sacred waters will be brought to Delphi from all over the world, from different rivers and different, sacred lakes. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this rather full programme. I'm going to finish, as is my wont, with a poem, because I am a poet, amongst everything else, and sometimes one just has to put it in poetry. This is poem 945 of my oeuvre. It's called Add the Impenetrable. Add the impenetrable law of the cascading of events. A pigeon's reckless fluttering and passaging, each atom worlds within cascading itself a microversity of incalculable angles and ricochets, all of them pecking and preening and interpenetrating like the rain in a hurricane. And the total of it all, the reckoning, a web of micro lives unfolding back to the beginning of thought, where the random syllables and consonants exploded into being. A movement towards infinite distance and juxtaposed into each other, held together still by the unsayable sound that began it all, assembling space and air to catch light and hold it, as at sunrise over the sea, to give it a name. And the verb that describes it all? Only a looming over, an inner intention towards the possible, where the impossible becomes proved, finally, as in the equations of karma, whose trajectory is life itself, seeking itself, questing an arc between fear and void, as when the down-falling droplets still manage to conjure a rainbow.